Alright guys, today we're going to look at how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. So we learned how to factor in a previous lesson. What we're going to do is use this to actually solve for our variable. So for each of these problems, I'm going to end up with answers like a equals, 4, a equals 5. Each of these problems will have two answers. Again, these are A's. I'm just writing down random numbers just to show you this is how our answer is going to look. We're not stopping at just the factoring. We're actually going to solve. So for my first example, I have a squared plus 3a plus 2 equals 0. The first thing I have to do is factor this problem. And I'm always going to write equals 0 on the right side as I go down. So first off, a squared is my first term, and I know that a squared can only be broken down as a times a. Then I'm looking at 2, which is my c term, so factors of 2. The factors of 2 are 1 and 2, and when I add them, I get 3. So I know that those are going to be the terms I need, 1 and 2. So positive 1, positive 2. So now what I have is a plus 1 times a plus 2 equals 0. To solve for a, I need to take my binomials, my groups, a plus 1, and set it equal to 0. And then a plus 2, and set it equal to 0. To solve for a, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides, and I get a equals negative 1. In the second problem, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, and I find that a equals negative 2. So my two answers are a equals negative 1 and a equals negative 2. In the second problem, I have a squared minus 4a minus 12 equals 0. Again, I'm going to start by factoring this problem. A squared can only be broken down as a times a. Then I'm looking at the factors of negative 12. So I have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Remember, 1 has to be negative, 1 has to be positive. That's why I wrote them down twice, because we're looking at the factors of negative 12. So I need the factors of negative 12 that are going to add up to be negative 4. Well, obviously these won't work. 3 and 4s are going to get me 7s. So it's going to come down to these two. Negative 2 and positive 6. This is positive 4. Positive 2 and negative 6 gets me negative 4. So these are going to be the pair that I work with. Positive 2, negative 6. Now what I'm going to do is take each of those binomials and set it equal to 0. So a plus 2 equals 0, a minus 6 equals 0. And I'm going to solve both of these to get my two answers. To solve, I subtract 2 from both sides, and I get a equals negative 2 as my first answer. My second answer, I add 6 to both sides, and I get a equals positive 6. In the third problem, I have x squared plus 8x minus 3 equals negative 3. What I need to do is make sure that the right side of my equation equals 0, and right now it equals negative 3. So to fix that, all I need to do is add 3 to both sides to make sure that the right side is equal to 0. These will cancel. These will also cancel, and it's going to leave me with x squared plus 8x equals 0. So I don't have a trinomial anymore, I have a binomial, meaning I have two terms. 2 terms is a binomial. All I can do is try to factor out the GCF. The GCF of x squared plus 8x is going to be x. And if I take an x out of both of those terms, I'm left with x plus 8. And again, this is equal to 0. What I need to do is take my two pieces, my and set it equal to 0, and then x plus 8 and set it equal to 0. I already have the first one solved, x equals 0. The second one, when I subtract 8 from both sides, I find that x equals negative 8. That's my second answer. In the last problem, I have 7p squared minus 41p plus 28 equals negative 2. The right side of my equation has to be 0, so I need to get rid of that negative 2 by adding it to both sides. When I add 2 to both sides, I have 7p squared minus 41p plus 30 equals 0. Looking out in front, I have a 7. 41 and 30 cannot be divided by 7, so I know that I am stuck with it. However, 7 can only be broken down as 7 and 1, so I'm going to have 7p and 1p as the breakdown of 7p squared. Now I'm looking at the factors of 30. And I need to match up the factors of 30, if I can spell factors. The factors of 30, and I need to match them up with 7 and p so that when I multiply the outside times the inside, it adds up to negative 41p. There's a negative sign out in front of the 41, so I know all of my factors of 30 have to be negative. When I multiply these numbers, I'm going to get positive 30, but if I add them together, I'll get a negative number. So, that's what I want. Now I need to match up the pairs. If I choose 30 as my number, and I put it out at the end, that'd be 30 times 7, which is going to be 210, which is way too large. If I put it in the middle, I'll have 30 plus 7 at best, so 37, so that's not going to work. If I take 15 times 7 is going to be too large of a number. That would be, 7 times 15? 105. If I put it in the middle, I'd have negative 15 minus 14. That's not going to work either. Negative 3 and 10. If I took negative 3 and negative 10 and wrote it down as is, negative 10 times 7 is negative 70, so I know it won't work in that order. If I tried to flip it, negative 3 times 7 is negative 21, minus 10p is negative 31, so I'm close, but that's still not going to be the correct order, which means I can't have those as my options. So the last thing to try is 5 and 6. I'm going to write it down as is, 5 and 6. This becomes negative 42, and this is negative 5, and if I add them together, I get negative 47. So let's try switching them around. 6 first, then 5. 7 times negative 5 is negative 35. Negative 6 times p is negative 6, and if I add them together, I get negative 41. So I know that this is the correct order for my factors. Now that I have my factors, again, I'm going to break them apart and set them both equal to 0. 7p minus 6 equals 0, and p minus 5 equals 0. And then I'll solve. To start off, I'm going to add 6 to both sides in the first equation. 7p equals 6. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 7 to get p equals 6 over 7 as my first answer. In the second equation, all I have to do is add 5 to both sides, and I see that p equals 5. And these are my two answers. Alright guys, that was solving equations by factoring. Have a great day.